In federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups: the globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.
Mr. Jennings, you're the Deputy Minister. Are you the one responsible for the redactions?
I'm not responsible for the redactions, sir.
So who was responsible for putting the black ink over all of the parts that were redacted? Who's responsible? Who's the one who crossed each line out?
So my team had direct discussions with Stellantis.
Sure, but who's the one that had the Sharpie marker in hand? And
yeah, so Stellantis ultimately had to agree to what they were willing to have in the shared with this committee in closed doors versus what not. The document that you have in front of you, the condition of that agreement what Stellantis had asked for is that it be shared in closed doors with this committee, and that is why the redactions were as minimal as they were.
Okay, the motion from this committee asked for all the documents fully unredacted. So why did we receive redacted documents?
So if you wish, I can go through the reasons why we think it's important to protect some commercially confidential
okay, but I'm
information.
just going to stop you quickly there because I think you've done that already with previous questions already, and in your opening remarks you already made reference to some of that. But what I am getting at is that there's 9 parliamentarians around this table. We agreed to a motion that called for unredacted documents. Ms. Goudreau did a good job of saying that in previous parliaments, there's been fully unredacted contracts put forward to this committee and possibly other committees, and done so in a manner that they could be viewed fully unredacted. How come we did not receive fully unredacted documents, much like other committees have before?
Okay, so my answer is first of all that we have a contractual obligation. So the contract clearly signs what we can release and not release, and it has to be agreed to with Stellantis. It was the first reason.
Okay, so which line in the contract stipulates that you have to have redacted contracts sent to parliamentarians?
I'll okay.
Like there's nowhere in here that said that you have the right to overstep Parliament. I didn't see that written in here. So where do you think that you have the power to disobey the will of Parliament?
It's clause 16.1, and just to be clear, I'm not trying to disobey the will of Parliament. What I'm trying to do is find a balanced way to make sure that you can do the scrutiny you wish to do and protect what's commercially confidential. And I proposed what was done in previous parliaments at both Indu Committee and Envy Committee, where we shared in closed doors very slightly redacted documents with those committees.
How many people within your department have seen this? Like, how many total people have seen this contract fully unredacted?
So I'll turn to my colleagues who may have a better estimate, but it's a handful. But I'm not sure if Stephanie or Denis would have a better number than that.
So, I mean, in addition to those of us at the table, we would have a team of 2 or 3 people who would probably have
plus if I a bit more.
maybe a couple more because on the financial side.
How many? Sorry, I didn't quite hear you because you were turned towards him.
No, I mean I'm guessing on the size here, but I would say it's probably a team of between 4 and 6 people in addition to those of us at the table.
In addition to you, so about 8 to 10 people. Okay. Mr. Bedard, I have a quick question for you and Ms. Gauthier. Clause 16.1 here, does that supersede Parliament or does Parliament supersede 16.1?
So clause 16 in the contract is a typical confidentiality clause. Those clauses do not override the power of certain bodies, including the courts and Parliament, to compel the production of documents.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, how much time do I have?
30 seconds.
I'm good, thanks.
Good morning, everyone. I'm sure everyone's seen the letter that our leader, Pierre Poilievre, sent to the Finance Minister with respect to the state of the auto industry in Canada on February the 9th. We've seen historic declines in auto manufacturing in Canada from somewhere near 2 million vehicles a year to 1.3 million vehicles a year. We've now seen the closure of facilities and thousands of jobs lost. So we want to talk about some solutions today that Conservatives have for the government with respect to the state of the auto industry in Canada. Number one, we've been consistent in this. They need to take the industrial carbon tax off in Canada. It costs the Canadian steel industry about $500 million a year, and we must be looking at similar numbers for Canadian auto manufacturing, which makes our cars more expensive and more difficult to export around the world. Number two, we have talked about taking the HST off of all Canadian-made vehicles. This in of itself would encourage Canadians to buy those vehicles. It would spur local production and have a great chance of bringing back some of the jobs that we've lost in Canada as a result of the tariffs that Donald Trump has put on our automobiles here in Canada. And talking about the tariffs that Donald Trump has put on our automotive manufacturing here in Canada, can someone please explain to me why, in the face of this trade war, this unjustified trade war that the Americans have put on our auto industry, that we would be giving Canadian tax dollars to subsidize electric vehicles made in the United States? This makes absolutely no sense. So we are calling on the government to not allow a single Canadian taxpayer dollar to subsidize or give a rebate for an electric vehicle that is manufactured in the United States. These are clear, sensible positions that will benefit Canadians and Canadian auto workers. I now want to turn it over to my colleague and friend Arpan Khanna from Oxford, where the Bright Drop factory closed.
Well, thank you, Kyle. Good morning, everyone. And we're joined by our great colleagues who also represent some strong areas for the auto sector. Ontario is home to one of the best auto workers in the world. You know, in Oxford County, we have the Toyota plant. And up until recently, we had our Cami GM plant. These are hardworking, tough, highly skilled workers who were the backbone of our community. And the sad news we heard last year with the plant closing has had a devastating effect in our communities. 1,200 workers were laid off. That's 1,200 families being affected. I often hear stories at the Cami plant of couples working together, multi-generations, working side by side on the assembly line. And there's the ripple effect of tens of thousands of spin-off jobs that are being impacted. So these jobs have a major impact in our community. But just last week, they received some more bad news. As the GM payouts started rolling out, the workers opened up their pay stub to notice that over 50% of their payouts were being withheld for taxes. Now you can imagine, in an affordability crisis like we're seeing today, what kind of impact that would have on their families. These workers have called me and told me that it feels like they're being kicked down while they've already been on the floor. They are now struggling to put food on their tables. They're struggling to pay mortgages, rent, and also plan for their kids' summer sports. So this has had a real impact on our community, and that anxiety is felt right across our region. And that is why our leader, Pierre Poilievre, and my colleague, Kyle Seaback, along with other colleagues, are calling on this government to take some action. Our workers need relief right now. They can't wait a year and a half to get some of the money back. They need some help right now. So we're calling on Minister of Finance to pass some measures with a stroke of a pen, help those workers that need help so we could have affordability in the lives of these tremendous workers. We're happy to take any questions you might have.
My question is for any one of you. What have you, has your leader, have your colleagues heard about Mr. Giovanni's trip to Washington?
Well, look, we are all, when we're elected to fight for our constituents and fight hard. That's what we're doing here right now. We're fighting for auto workers. And I have lots of auto workers in my riding that work at the Brampton facility, which has been closed. Mr. Giovanni was down in the United States fighting for his constituents because they have many that work at the Oshawa plant. And that's what we're here to do.
Can we therefore see more of you or your colleagues having meetings with officials in Washington?
We have colleagues going down in Washington all the time. When I had the trade portfolio, I was down in Washington meeting with officials. That's what we're here to do, especially in light of what's going on with the trade war with the United States.
With the withholding tax proposal, can you maybe walk us through why you're proposing it only for GM workers? It sounds like this is a tax that you're going to have to pay eventually, whether it's going to be withheld right now or on tax season. Is it because this belief that there's auto workers might not be in a position to have another job, in the coming weeks or months?
Look, I think the Conservatives have always stood for the rights of workers to make sure that they're protected and they have the support they need to make sure they can live an affordable lifestyle. When I talk to the workers in my riding, I could tell you that they're struggling and they're nervous. So for us, we want to make sure that the support is there. They can't wait a year and a half for that money to come back. We all see the numbers with food inflation at record numbers, 6.2%, double that of the U.S. So to make life affordable for these workers and other workers, we're open to making sure that other workers enjoy the same benefits that these workers do in GM. It's important we take these steps, and we're willing to work with the government. The government often talks about collaboration. We are calling on the finance minister to work with us, sit down with us, and find those relief we could provide to the workers during these tough times.
You also talked in your letter about the lack of strategy from the federal government when it comes to autos. One thing we've heard from this government, though, is using our defense investments as a way to leverage, bringing in different automakers, potentially from South Korea and Germany. What do you make of this effort from the government?
What we so often see from this government is vague MOUs that might lead to something someday. And that's great. But what we actually, the plan that we've proposed, what we've just said, are things that would actually increase domestic production right away, not wait for some promise with another country that may get an auto manufacturer to come to Canada someday that may produce some vehicles. We think the better path forward is what I laid out earlier.
It's not just auto workers who have been affected by the trade war. We're seeing a lot of forestry workers have lost their jobs as well. They've been laid off as well. Federal government has touted endlessly things like the job sharing arrangement that they believe will be able to prevent some of these layoffs. What is the disconnect here? Because it's clearly not working, because we're seeing workers get their layoff notices. What is the disconnect between government policy right now and what's happening?
The disconnect is the complete and utter failure of the government to get an agreement on any of the issues that we have with the United States. The softwood lumber dispute has been going on for somewhere close to 9 years now with absolutely no action. In fact, it gets worse every single time. The countervailing and anti-dumping duties go up. The job losses and the mill closures accelerate. Meanwhile, it's not even on the agenda. For our forestry workers, they must think this government has completely abandoned them. It's never even discussed by the Mark Carney government. And on the other tariffs on auto, again, we have to remember, Mark Carney promised to have a deal with the United States by, I think it was July 21st. We're now 8-10 months past that, and things are only getting worse. Which brings me back to the question. I want everyone to think about this. When they're tariffing our vehicles to the point where we're having 5,000 auto workers lose their job, 2 plants that now have laid off all their workers, they're going to give rebates to American-made EVs. It's a kick in the teeth to auto workers. I spent the weekend talking to them. So their strategy on every level is not working. And we can't fix that. Their incompetent strategy. What we can do is suggest ideas that will make a difference. And that's what my colleague and I are doing today.
Je me permettre en français, M. Paulus. J'aimerais vous entendre d'une part sur les
Each, Mr. McCauley, you'll lead off first, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, A.G. Hogan and everyone else for the commentary. I want to start, Madam Beaujeu, who writes the copy of the public accounts? By the copy, I mean almost the editorial and the explanation. Not the numbers, but who writes out copy?
Thank you for the question. Are you talking about the financial statement discussion and analysis?
Volume 1,
FSDNA?
Volume 2, Volume 3. I can pick something at random. Transfer payment, a transfer money from a government, et cetera, et cetera. Who is writing that? The reason I ask is, if I'm looking at it, the public accounts, and I appreciate it's received a clean audit, but if I'm reading at it, it looks like there are Liberal government talking points in the public accounts. I don't believe these should be in the public accounts. I'll give you an example. Page 8, Section 1. The government is moving toward a new capital budgeting approach that distinguishes its day-to-day operational spending from expenditures that stimulates public and private sector capital formation. Like, these are talking points right out of the Prime Minister's office, And this is for after this year's public accounts. So it doesn't affect the 2024-2025 public accounts. So why are Liberal talking points put in last year's public accounts, and who wrote it and who approved it?
Thank you for the question. I mean, the financial statement discussion analysis is a product of the Department of Finance. So we try to find an appropriate balance between representing the...
Let me stop you right there, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
These changes that have been widely discredited, I think, by the PBO and others, are for the current fiscal year, not the previous year. So why are Liberal talking points in last year's public accounts, which are supposed to be nonpartisan, public accounting signed off by the AG, why is it in last year's public accounts?
Thank you for the
and
question.
I'll be blunt here. Is it appropriate? And AG Hogan, do you think it's appropriate?
Well, perhaps I'll start and then I'll let
Just briefly, 'cause I
Mr.
don't have a lot of
Leswick go.
time.
The audit opinion, which starts on page 59 in the English version of the 2025 public accounts, covers the financial statements which follow. When it comes to the financial statement discussion and analysis, we don't opine on that. We are associated with it, so we make sure that it's not misleading. But part of the responsibility of a government in that document, the financial statement discussion and analysis, is to talk about the future and to talk about risks and how they're managed.
Do you think it's appropriate, Mr. Leswick, these specific comments?
I certainly take your point, sir.
Stimulating public and private sector capital formation?
It was trying to provide some sort of, as Ms. Hogan said, directional framing for...
Page 9, Section 1, it continues, elimination of the consumer carbon tax on the fuel products further contributed to lower inflation, which of course was denied for years by the government. But again, this is for discussion of the 2025-2026, it was eliminated. Didn't affect the inflation issue in 2024-2025 that the public accounts covers. Again, it looks to me that it was added in as a PR stunt to promote the current government, because it has nothing to do with the 2024-2025 year.
So do you want me to respond?
Yeah, like, am I wrong here? Like, I haven't seen this in past public accounts. I've never seen previous public accounts where it's commenting on future inflation being changed because of...
Yeah, I certainly take your point, and we'll be very mindful of that going forward.
Okay. The carbon, I want to get back to, again, the carbon tax. It talks about the providing small and medium-sized companies their money back. How much is still there to be paid out? Because it had been promised for years it would be paid out. The public accounts comments on the huge majority of it being paid out, but then it talks further about it's going to be paid out over years. So when will it be paid out? Do you know?
That's a good question. I don't have the remaining balance available to me, but we can follow up with you directly, or with the committee with that answer.
Okay. I want to talk about the liabilities portion. When it talks about contingent liabilities, it's jumped from 2 trillion to 3 trillion. And I realize what contingent means. Madam Beaudreau or Mr. Leswick, like, what has changed that there's a 1 trillion jump in our contingent liabilities? Is that the ruling around Richmond with the land claim there, or?
Thank you for the question. I don't think we have a 1 trillion increases in contingent liabilities. What I remember, it is going from 56 billion to 54 billion, but there is no $1 trillion increase in contingent liabilities.
I'll find the exact thing. I think it's jumped from, when it talks about contingent, like possible, there's, based on the potential risk of the payout.
Mm-hmm.
It's in there. I'll find it exactly for you. And I actually only have 13 seconds left, so I'll have the page number when we come back.
Thank you, Mr. McCauley.
Which is for 6 minutes. First up, we have Mr. Menegakis for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for appearing before us today and for your testimonies. I'd like to start with you, Mr. Paolosini. May Trin, who's an entrepreneur, was recently on BNN and noted that tech startups are leaving Canada in favor of doing business in the United States. In fact, she said Canada is like a really good-looking guy you want to date, but for some reason he makes it really difficult for you to be with him. Do you believe the immigration system today enables entrepreneurs to stay in Canada and build businesses?
I don't think it does at all. In my opening remarks, I mentioned a friend of mine, Mustafa. Like I mentioned, he has raised $1 million in private investor capital. He's doing operations in 3 different countries. He's got memorandums of understanding signed, and he's going to have to wait 84 years to get his PR. And yes, he's in Canada right now on an open work permit, but the challenge is the uncertainty for these applicants. We've got, like I said, 500 spots for startup visa applicants, and how it got so out of hand with 43,000 in backlog, according to the minister's transition binder, I just don't understand how that happened. I just don't understand, like they were asleep at the switch or something.
Thank you. You've also published letters to the minister regarding processing timelines and inconsistency. How would you characterize the current state of the IRCC?
A bit like a lottery, a little bit random. You never really know what you're going to get. Certainly not fair, no transparency, and very limited accountability. That is my statement on the current state of IRCC.
You've also advocated for a sustainable immigration policy. Do you believe the current Liberal immigration policy over the past few years has been sustainable?
No, particularly in reference to the I will say that the reduction in the temporary resident numbers has actually been effective, cutting out the, let's say, the student fraud, the international student fraud, and the public-private partnerships with DLIs. But what was concerning was the one-time measure in the budget, where they didn't put the number for protected persons, but they put the number for students and economic class, because, well, it's a much smaller number of 33,000 TR to PR. And when you look through the 2024 and 2025 stakeholder consultations and the consultations on express entry, it is obvious what Canadians want. They want to focus on skills. They want to focus on economic class, immigration. And I believe that's why they left it out of the budget.
So just for the record, in your view, has the current government's rapid increase in immigration targets outpaced the actual growth of our housing supply and healthcare infrastructure?
I believe the temporary residents did at some point. Like I mentioned, the current government did really reel that in, and they reeled in the LMIA fraud, which I was quite outspoken about over the last couple of years. And in terms of the permanent numbers, I think the numbers right now are relatively sustainable if they go with 380,000 permanent residents per year in the budget, not 455,000 when you include the special one-time measures.
So one of the phenomenons we've seen, certainly in urban areas across the country, definitely in my riding and the greater Toronto area, in New York region, is youth unemployment. You've spoken about the fraudulent labor market impact assessments, LMIAs. Can you expand on the impact this has on youth unemployment?
Of course. What happens is that employers, when they can bring somebody on a closed work permit based on a low wage LMIA, they have basically a modern day wage slave who has to show up for work every single day, or else they're afraid that they're not going to get to realize their dream of remaining in Canada. And for employers that do pay the minimum wage, they find that these workers are better than Canadians who can just, they have an open work permit essentially, right? They can go work at the next shop and they're competitive in the market. So this has definitely contributed to it. And like I said, Service Canada has really cracked down on it. So
thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your responses. Mr. Baruchiski, you have described the current state of immigration as possibly the country's worst public policy failure in a century. Can you elaborate on how the Liberal government's failure specifically destabilized Canada's ability to provide housing and healthcare?
Well, I don't know if I can help on specifically housing and healthcare, but in general, there are large numbers. We were just talking about permanent residents. and we were going up towards 500,000. But that's only a small part of the picture. And the way that happened from right after the pandemic period, there's a huge explosion in various categories of temporary residents. We were never really even told about that. We couldn't plan for that. Okay. And when I'm saying 2-3 times more than the permanent residents. So it doesn't make sense to talk about immigration in Canada by focusing just on permanent residents. Just that little simple point, but it has huge implications because we're talking about many more immigrants, temporary residents.
Now, you've also argued that letting in so many people into the labor market and low-skilled jobs have actually lowered GDP. So, similar question: how does this touch upon youth unemployment?
20 seconds.
Right. Well, what happens if you're bringing a lot of temporary resident students who then are working, so they're taking the kinds of jobs I would want to have if I'm 16, 17, 18. I'd want to work in a fast food restaurant as I did. I'd want to do these things. And if your competition is a lot of people from poorer countries, that's a discussion paper from the Bank of Canada was telling us, poorer countries bring certain kinds, lots of younger people, they're studying, but they're not really studying.
Thank you, Professor Barosiski, and thank you, Mr. Menegakis.
Starting with Mr. Small for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to welcome our witnesses today. My first question is to Ms. Street. Ms. Street, did the government need to sign on to the United Nations 30 by 30 Marine Protected Areas scheme in order, to protect Canadian waters when more than a dozen acts of Parliament are in place to protect fish stocks and our ocean ecosystems? Was agreeing to 30 by 30 necessary, do you feel?
We don't feel it was necessary. We feel, it was a very extreme target. And unfortunately, it has been the fishing industry that's borne the brunt of what we've seen, our goalposts that are constantly moving. We heard 10, then we heard 15, and that was 20, and that was 30. And our question is, when does it stop? Again, we don't feel like the fishing industry is being treated fairly in this. And had we all gotten to the table, there are pristine areas, say in the Arctic, in Northern Labrador, that everybody was willing to work together that could help meet those targets and not affect our industry negatively. But unfortunately, what we're seeing is just a complete, I call it a disrespect for our industry. I mean, we just a little while ago had the Virgin Rocks come across our desk as a potential closure, and our members are up in arms. I mean, it's one of the most lucrative historical fishing grounds when it comes to northern cod, which of course is on the rebound and is becoming much more important to our members as a species that they will harvest. I
want to stop you right there, Ms. Street. When did you find out about the Virgin Rocks Marine Protected Area? Would you have been one of the first groups that would have been approached for your support in the developing of that, since you're such a user that depends on that area so much?
Yeah, we're not quite sure where we were in the hierarchy of folks that were informed, but I do remember our industry liaison, Katie Power, who deals with closed areas on the forefront, coming to me late fall last year and saying, look, I think this is going to be a major issue. And we were absolutely floored when we saw that the Virgin Rocks were even in consideration.
Thank you. So I heard you mention pristine areas that could be protected. And, typically when we look at land-based protected areas, historically, we'd be looking at areas where we had old growth forest or whatnot, and areas that were never touched, that were pristine. Do we have areas in the ocean that are pristine and rarely fished that you think could have a priority to be protected over areas that have been, basically some of these areas have been bottom trawled that the bottom is like a parking lot?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously speak to our Indigenous counterparts on a regular basis as well. And I know there were some areas in Northern Labrador that were under consideration, and mostly areas that were never fished, whether by our members or Indigenous groups. And it just seems like those fell by the wayside. Unfortunately, it seems like the target is always on the back of the fishing industry.
Thank you. To Ms. McDonald, so how do you feel about the need for our federal government to sign on to the United Nations 30 by 30 Marine Protected Areas Protocol when our oceans are protected by more than a dozen acts of Parliament?
So our role is not to comment on the policy. Certainly I've been part of a number of discussions, and there is a global focus on protection. But I think that the conversation globally and the challenge is we can't have the designations outpacing our ability to monitor, enforce, and understand impacts.
Thank you. But along the lines of where Ms. Street and I were just speaking, when we look at land-based protected areas and national parks, historically, when we began with national parks, pristine areas and old growth forests and areas that were never touched by any type of developing or resource harvesting were first to be protected. Do you think that's the way that 30 by 30 could proceed in protecting pristine areas that are not touched already?
That would not be my area of expertise.
Okay, thank you. So, Ms. Street, oftentimes Canadian NGOs are pushing the narrative for establishing new protected areas, and they're often funded by American foundations to help sway public opinion in favor of creating these protected areas. How do you feel about that?
Well, we've been very public and very clear on our position when it comes to ENGOs, and we're deeply troubled that the Canadian government has them at the table as stakeholders in fishery management decisions when clearly the only stake they hold is padding their own pockets and their own coffers for their donors. I want to stress again that FFAW members believe in conservation. There are no greater stewards of the resource than fish harvesters. It's their livelihood. It's going to be their livelihood for generations. And it's very easy for somebody in an office who's probably never seen saltwater to weigh in and try to shut down somebody else's livelihood when it really doesn't affect them. It's been troubling since the days of their advocacy against the seal hunt. We've seen the devastation that that's caused. And now we see them trying to shut down fisheries, shut down areas, and just absolutely nothing demonstrated that it's going to achieve any of their goals. So we really do question their motives. And again, as you said, Mr. Small, they're catering to American donors, just millionaires who have no stake in the fishing industry. So it is troubling, and we're seeing their involvement grow, and it's something that we are going to continue to push back on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Small. Next, we're going to go to
the second round, which is 5 minutes. And to begin our 5-minute round, we have Mr. Davies. Please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Professor Barutsky, in a recent article, you said that the extent that public support depends on sensible control of borders and intake levels, it is difficult to treat migrants in a dignified and humane manner if the local population is not fully on board with the country's overall immigration policy. To regain public confidence in Canada's immigration system, the first step is to encourage an honest and open public debate. This cannot happen if the government withholds basic information, obfuscates in its public dissemination, or simply does not have essential data. That's a very interesting statement, but I'm interested in specifically where do you think the legislation fell short in achieving or fixing the problems that you've identified?
The problem you're referring to, so in that report, I give recommendations, and I suggest that the House of Commons should actually be taking action and forcing the minister in the annual report to actually give more detailed data. And if we would know that there's certain categories that were starting to increase quite a bit, we could plan much better, and there would we'd be forced to have a discussion on it. What happened over the last few years, so this period 22, 23, 24, is that there are lots of changes to the system. It wasn't the permanent residents, so it wasn't tabled in the annual report. So I would suggest that in the annual report, so that's my recommendations in that report you're citing, is that we actually modernize the annual report so that there's a lot of data. I would like to see much more so that you can have more fuller discussions. We'd be forced to talk about temporary residents. If there's a huge increase, we would know that. We would have known that back in 23. I wouldn't have had to actually decipher through the various statistics. That's what I had to do and I started publishing in the Globe and Mail about this. Strange. We've got all of a sudden we're talking a million something. The minister never mentioned this. So forcing the minister, and I think this is good for all parties, we would just have more of an open debate so we don't end up 2 years later, the media catches up, and then we sort of start having the real debate we should have 2 years earlier. It's unfortunate, I would say, that the minister at the time did not talk openly about this. The following minister was more upfront, but still then we have to come and have good discussions and figure out. So I would say the debates are not the same as they were 2-3 years ago. So if we talk about sort of a change in public opinion, if we're worried about xenophobia, we have to actually recognize that something did happen in the last 3-4 years in Canada. And I don't say the last year. Of course, our neighbors to the south have destabilized lots of things around the world. But on this question,
I have pretty limited time, so I'd like to get a couple of questions. But to follow up on that, the Conservatives have proposed some key amendments to Bill C-3 that were later withdrawn when it went to the report stage of the House, specifically related to transparency, the sort of the stuff you're talking about here. That was removed. In the fall budget, the Liberals named 35,000 one-time slots that they can allocate for any purpose, including given permanent residency status to people who have crossed illegally into Canada. Isn't this a counterproductive measure?
sorry, I'm not sure I completely understood, but if you're saying that sort of we don't want transparency on situations involving people.
Well, it's an allocation of 35,000 people that we have no real idea of who they are, where they come from, but they can have access to permanent residency without much transparency. Would you think that's a good idea?
I would say, of course not.
Okay. You had mentioned early in your that rights were created that really didn't exist before. Can you explain that, please?
1 minute.
So if we look very carefully what the Prime Minister was saying and the government was saying in 2017, was saying that anybody showing up at the border has a right to a hearing. We were referring to the Roxham Road situation, but we go then to 2024. The Prime Minister is saying in a YouTube video, in the French version only, not the English version, that, oh, that was actually abused. So, and we actually then changed the rules because we don't have an automatic right to claim asylum at the border. There is actually there's inadmissibility questions. The Refugee Convention doesn't give you that right. If you're protected in another state, you're supposed to protect refugees. But where they're actually protected, that's that's a whole bunch of other factors coming in.
So when you said we need to align ourselves with our partners in the world, I mean, is that one of the key sectors that you would suggest needs alignment?
Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting. The solutions that our partners, and I'm spending a lot of time with our European partners, and the governments are looking at different ways to deal with this, hopefully in a humane way that balances. We want to protect, so I agree with what my colleague was saying, we do want to be careful about xenophobic tendencies, but we want to be realistic about it. And I'm saying we went too far on the sort of the rights. And so our partners are actually quite active on this, and I'm afraid that if we don't start working here much more actively, that we'll be behind. They'll be innovating different kinds of protection systems, and we'll be behind.
Thank you, Professor Barutsiski, and thank you, Mr. Davies.
You have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. To start with, Ms. Boudreau, following up on my colleague, Mr. McCauley here, you talked about provisions in being $54 billion, but what he was getting at is on page 42, section 1, it says as of March 31st, 2025, the government exposure is over $3 trillion, whereas in 2020 to 2024, it was $2 trillion. So that's where he was going at, so you can prepare for that. I don't need that question at this point, or the answer to that question at this point. You prepare for hearing. Can I go? I'll start with the Auditor General. In your opening comments, you talked about the budget approvals were delayed. Can you determine the reason why and who was responsible for those delays, whether it was necessarily the government's finance versus departments, to where? Just trying to get down to who's responsible for the delays and where that, and whether you were able to determine that in your audit.
I'm sorry, I think those remarks were made by the Controller General and not the Auditor General, but
Okay.
you would have to ask Ms. Boudreau.
Oh. Oh, okay. I thought that was your end, but go ahead, Ms. Boudreau, then.
Okay, thank you. So if we talk about, if you are referring to Public Accounts 2024, the tabling of Public Accounts 2024 was made last year in December of 2024. So it was late for
I'm thinking that it was.
I think I understand now. Are you talking about delays in
The
approvals
budget
of
approvals.
corporate plans for
For
crown
the plan.
corporations?
Correct.
Okay. I was thinking about the federal budget, so my apologies.
Yeah, no.
We highlighted the fact that a crown corporation, which is really supposed to operate at arm's length from the government and has its own board of directors, however, is required to prepare a corporate plan for the government to approve. Delays in those corporate plans can cause issues, especially if you need to, if you want to change the way you operate or if you need to borrow. They are all submitted to a minister, and then the ministers have to get approval through cabinet. And so we've just been highlighting that for years, many are not approved before the year end starts. And there are some that still wait years to be approved. So the reasons for those delays would have to be explained by someone from the government.
Okay, so you're probably not going to be able to answer the next question with that answer. And my next part is just extrapolating on that. Do you think it's the structure that is resulting, or is it just the actual, because the actual people in the departments that are doing it that are on that problem? Because you've said in the past that they don't necessarily have to change rules if they just followed rules. So I'm just wondering if it's following the structure or actually just doing it.
I think that that's actually a difficult question to answer because it could be because of the structure. It could be the volume of corporate plans that are coming through and the timing at which they come through. But it could also be about the content of them, right? If we used, for example, Canada Post corporate plan hadn't been approved for many years, so they were operating under an older corporate plan, and they were still running recurring losses. They had liquidity issues, and the government was going back and forth with them on the options being presented in the corporate plan. So I think at times it will depend on the content. At times it will depend on the system. So it's a hard question to answer.
Then you probably won't be able to answer the next part of it too. But just going down that road, did you see any evidence or plans that the budgets would be approved on a more timely basis going in the future? Do you see anything that they are actually addressing to fix that problem?
So it's been a few years that we've been highlighting this, and I would tell you over the last couple of years, it's remained about the same with the delays and those approved late or not at all. So again, that's why I say the cycle that they're in or the reasons the delays are something
not being addressed.
I can't answer yet.
Yes. Okay. All right. For Mr. Leswick, I don't have much time, but you just mentioned in your comments about they had fiscal anchors that were set. Can you describe to me how they've, I don't know, you're probably not going to have enough time here, but it seems to me those fiscal anchors have been moved a lot, and whether or not they're going to actually remain or be addressed as staying in the same place going forward.
Well, the government has stated its two fiscal anchors as being a downward deficit GDP ratio and operating balance within the context of its capital budgeting framework by 28-29. So that's the focus. That's the mission.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stevenson. Up next is
Candace Roy. With respect to the safeguards to protect sensitive sectors announced with the Prime Minister's strategic partnership with China, was it your understanding they would apply to critical minerals? Safeguards to protect the sensitive sectors announced in that strategic partnership with China?
Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with enough to answer your question.
Dr. Stein?
Repeating your question, please.
With respect to the safeguards to protect sensitive sectors announced with the Prime Minister's strategic partnership with China, was it your understanding those as they would apply to the critical minerals?
It was not my understanding.
Okay. Should the government extend these safeguards to include the critical minerals?
I believe it should.
What kind of critical minerals is China going after around the world? And in particular, which minerals does Canada have that China has its eyes on?
We do have large reserves of rare earths. We've been talking about rare earths, but China already has a lot of rare earths at its availability. What we do have recently is a lot of gallium germanium, we have large stocks of nickel, and nickel is interesting because nickel is one of the few things that China does not control. It's Indonesia that controls nickel in the world. Also, our nickel is green because of the fact that we manufacture it with renewable energy. So it makes it highly desirable. It's low carbon. And nickel, as I'm sure you all know, is the ultimate war material going back to the Second World War because of the manufacture of various equipment. So that is one that we should definitely look at. But we should also look at things like cadmium, which is not even on our critical mineral list as it is defined at the moment.
Okay, last week the Minister of Natural Resources did not rule out Chinese state-owned companies from buying up Canadian companies that attract oil, gas, and critical minerals. What would be the consequence if this government were to approve such a sale?
I want to say that at the moment they can do it anyway. And I want to give you an example. There has been an outcry because of First Quantum Minerals, who you may recall owns a mine in Panama, a copper mine in Panama. And everybody's been saying that this is a Canadian mine that was nationalized by Panama. But First Quantum Minerals is owned 20% majoritarily by a Chinese company through the stock exchange. So what I'm saying is that many of the mines that we consider to be Canadian are essentially Chinese anyway.
Okay, what is the threat of Chinese state-owned companies to taking up stake or leasing infrastructure like they did with the Port of Darwin in Australia? Are there any indications the safeguards would extend to Chinese controlling our infrastructure?
I think there's always a risk. You may be aware of the Port of Zambia as well, Zambia in Africa, which was the government defaulted on a loan and, well, China took back the port.
Okay, the Port of Darwin in Australia was leased to a Chinese company for 99 years in 2015, but the Australian government is trying to reclaim ownership, which China has then threatened them with vague measures. China has long used economic coercion to defend its interests. What kind of measures could they impose from countries taking back ownership of their infrastructure?
It is very politically because China does not play by the same rules as the West.
Yes, Mr. Hernandez-Roy.
Can I answer that sort of in the context? I'm primarily Latin Americanist. Chinese control of infrastructure, particularly ports in Latin America, is a very big concern for the United States because some of these things, including the mega port in Chancay in Peru, are being built with dual-use specifications. And in the event of a crisis, not only can they restrict trade flows within the region, but within the region to North America, potentially they could be used for denial of area operations or refueling, et cetera. So having, and not only do they own and operate, they have the exclusive sort of almost sovereign right to some of these areas. So allowing that kind of a penetration is a huge risk. And you've seen the U.S. government recognize that with tactics that I don't agree with, but certainly a concern, for instance, in Panama with Hutchinson Ports controlling 2 of the 4 major ports in the Panama Canal on both ends. And the Panamanian government, the Supreme Court 2 weeks ago ruled that the contract would be null and void because the company basically didn't fulfill its contract. But the Chinese control energy systems, the electrical grid in Lima, Peru. They control a number of critical infrastructure, not just ports, but other things as well, that countries in Latin America have not paid enough attention to and are thus vulnerable to economic coercion should they try to pull back.
Thank you. Ms. Gallant, I know Dr. Barry's hand is up. I'm going to pass over to Mr. Watchorn, and maybe he can engage with you in this respect. Mr. Watchorn.
Possibly.
Whatever Mr. Watchorn wants. It's your time. It's your time, Mr. Watchorn.
Dr. Bayer, si vous voulez répondre à la question, allez-y.
If you want to answer the question, please go ahead.
I agree that some Latin American countries have not paid sufficient attention to Chinese investments in infrastructure. This hasn't happened in Canada with regards to major infrastructure like ports. And I do believe that if a Chinese company wished to buy the Port of Vancouver, that purchase would be blocked under the Investment Canada Act. So it's an issue, but it's not yet an issue in Canada, at least not to that degree. The other thing I just want to suggest very briefly is that you should distinguish between Chinese investments in mining operations located within Canada and Chinese investments in companies that are incorporated in Canada, but where the mining is taking place overseas. The majority of the world's mining industry is incorporated in Canada, but an awful lot of those operations do not involve our territory. So there's a distinction there. We should still be concerned about those operations overseas, but my main concern is with mines located here in our territory. Thank you.
Merci. Our third round now, Mr. Macaulay, you have the floor again for 5 minutes.
Thanks. Ms. Boudreau, just quickly to the issue of the $3 trillion. It says as of March 1st, the exposure, and I apologize, the exposure is over $3 trillion. So just quickly, why the jump from $2 trillion to $3 trillion for our exposure? Briefly.
So I can tell you what's included in the $3 trillion. It's mainly the insurance programs at CDIC, the Canada Development Insurance Corporation, as well as EDC. It accounts for about 2.2. So when I look at 2025, we have a little over $3 trillion. And when I look at 2024, I don't have that calculation of what makes up that amount in front of me, but I can provide that.
Wonderful. Mr. Leswick, I just want to go back to you, please. IMF's Article 4 consultation for Canada states clarifying the role of debt to GDP, not debt to deficit, but debt to GDP ratio as a primary anchor would strengthen discipline, transparency, and credibility. The government's moved away from debt to GDP. IMF says we need to return to that as an anchor. Is that something that you believe we should do?
Well, certainly I think debt sustainability is paramount importance, but it's for the government to decide what fiscal anchor will steer its fiscal policy.
So the government's using a political decision on debt to or deficit to GDP instead of what's best for the country, perhaps, as suggested by the IMF. The IMF also states we should provide clarity around the use of the capital versus operating expenses, which the government's not provided. Is that a weakness, perhaps, in our, transparency and accountability?
Listen, I take, a lot of things the IMF says with a grain of salt. Debt sustainability is important. The government has every opportunity to select its own fiscal anchors. So I'll leave it at that. But we obviously take the Article 4 advice seriously, and we'll stop there. I want to get back to one of my things I always bring up every year, and I'm sure you're ready for it. The net debt to GDP. We always hear the government claim best in the G7, and we brought it up before several years ago with yourself. It includes the assets from the CPP and the Quebec pension plan. I notice in this year's public accounts, first time I've seen it, where it states that such should not generally be considered part of it because you can't access it for reasons without permission from the provinces. Do you still think it's valid for the government to include CPP and QPP as part of its net, or is it its claims of lowest deficit to GDP in the G7? Yeah, thank you for the question. I do, but only for the basis of international comparisons. That's the kicker in my view, is because if you want to compare net debt GDP ratios across advanced economies, it's almost impossible without these types of modifications. For example, many other advanced economies take their social security.
No, I understand that. So you think it's just... I'm going to go back to your quote from 3 years ago, because I understand the target of my criticism, because you have to ask yourself whether the assets of the CPP would be available to the government to use in a time of distress. And then you quickly stopped yourself. And we had kind of a laugh because it's understanding the government can't access that. it would be political suicide. So again, should they be using these untouchable assets in their PR, basically, that we are in great shape? When you take that out and compare it to OECD, I think we're like 22nd best out of 29. And again, it goes back to transparency.
Yeah, I take the point, and I made the point. I agree, like accessing the CPP, QPP accounts in a time of distress would be prohibitive. But for international comparisons, you have to add them back in. Because in other countries, they take social security premiums and they throw it against general revenues. And they just hold the liability in their general accounts. So for international comparability, I support it, but I definitely I emphasize, I agree with you from
I'll go back to your comment from 4 years ago at a previous one to that. I admit there's a lot of gymnastics here to justify the government's use of that. I've only got 15 seconds, so I'll just pass it the next time around. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think that in the budget, we described...
For Kitchener, South Hespeler. Thank you, Madam Speaker. It is such a pleasure to rise in support of this very excellent bill presented by my very excellent colleague from Simcoe North. The bill is important. It speaks to principles fundamental to just government, to fairness and transparency. And I'm sorry to say that these principles have been sorely lacking in the actions of the Liberal government over the last 10 years. So for those just tuning in at home, every year, the Canadian Revenue Agency, for the last 10 years, has forgiven or written off more than $1 billion of taxes or loans owed. More than $1 billion. And in the last fiscal year of 23 to 24, it was $18 billion. As my colleague just mentioned, this is on the order of our entire defense spending, which is about $35 billion a year. So $18 billion of forgiveness of loans written off. For those at home, and I'm thinking of my friend Dave, who's a plumber, my friend Ryan, who is a contractor. Yesterday we had a skating event put on by my office in Kitchener. I met Dragon, a small short-haul truck driver, and Libby, a grade 1 school teacher. Did they receive any forgiveness on their taxes? Did they receive any write-offs on their loans to the CRA? The answer is that they didn't. The vast majority of these write-offs went to large corporate fat cats who have big lobbyist budgets, who spend a lot of time in the offices of the government across the way. The CRA is systematically forgiving massive corporations the taxes that they owe to the public. The Globe and Mail reports that last year, 11 corporations, just 11, accounted for nearly a quarter of the write-offs. This arrangement raises the question, who is the government working for? Are they working for the people, or are they working for their friends on Bay Street? I can think of 2 cases in recent memory where the same question arose, where the same principles of transparency and fairness were broken all across the land. One is the COVID pandemic, where mom and pop stores, I'm thinking of, so at the beginning of the pandemic, I was teaching medicine at Queen's University in Kingston. There was a hardware store downtown that stood for 70 years. It was run by the Vandervoorts. I think it was called Vandervoort General Store. And unfortunately, it closed after 70 years of continuously serving the community, while Canadian Tire and Home Depot and Walmart all stood open. Similarly, small-time mom and pop gyms were closed down while major branches managed to stay open. And how was that? Well, through my work in politics, I've gotten to know some of these lobbyists. They had gigantic contracts lobbying governments, both federal and provincial, to stay open in a way that Vandervoort hardware store simply could not do. Another major example is the SNC-Lavalin scandal. If I were to go bribe the dictator of Libya and provide strippers to his sons, I think that I would go to jail. But if I was the proprietors of SNC-Lavalin, I would get the Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau, in the Attorney General's office, violating the principle of prosecutorial independence, which, by the way, is the same principle that the President of the United States broke and resulted in his first impeachment. So SNC-Lavalin is able to get the lobbyists who have the ear of the Prime Minister to get sweetheart deals, to get forgiveness, of the similar sort the CRA is dishing out to massive corporations, and mom and pop are not. Not that I have any interest in bribing the dictator of Libya anytime soon. I'm glad that got a laugh. So what this bill does is restore some of the fairness and some of the transparency. If this bill passes, which I dearly hope that it will, if the CRA forgives more than $1 million of a loan, and I think it, or taxes, I think the vast majority of Canadians will never see $1 million, let alone have a tax bill of over $1 million. Then they at least have to say who they gave it to and why. It's very simple. It's not even saying that they can't continue to exercise this forgiveness. It's just saying the public is owed a debt. The government, in its boundless wisdom, has decided to write off that debt. We need to know who and we need to know why. And that would, at the very least, give us the opportunity to look at the lobbying registry and see how much that corporation paid on lobbying the Liberal government, and to start to ask the question whether those two numbers are related. For those watching at home, I have to say I was so struck shortly after my election. The first time I opened my parliamentary email, there were literally hundreds of invitations to meet with lobbyists. There were hundreds of invitations to attend receptions in downtown Ottawa. I instructed my staff, if the meeting doesn't say Kitchener, South Hespeler somewhere in it, if it's not from a constituent of mine, I don't want to take it. But let me say that from what I have observed during my time here, many of those meetings and many of those receptions are attended by the members opposite, and it is my view that these corporations don't spend all that money on lobbying for no reason. They know how to get a return on investment, and I think that they are getting that return on investment, as evidenced by the $18 billion that the government forgave large corporations in the last fiscal year. So we want transparency, we want the registry, we want to start asking these questions. It was, by the way, from my understanding, the common practice for years and years that parliamentarians could at least ask order paper questions to put it to the government, who did you forgive and why? But just in recent years, the CRA has stopped providing that basic transparency. So we used to have it by convention, and somehow it's gone away over the last 10 years. And now we need to actually write it into the law that this transparency must exist henceforth. And I think it's a shame. I wish that we could use the honor system and could continue with our tradition of open government. It's particularly a shame given that 10 years ago, Justin Trudeau came to power promising to have the most transparent government in Canadian history. And in this and so many other ways, we have been betrayed. So that is about as much as I have to say about it, Madam Speaker. I know that the members opposite like to say that they are in a new government, they're doing new things, and I think this would be a tremendous opportunity for them to turn away from the legacy of the Trudeau government, from the legacy of restricting transparency, and beginning to restore, even in this small way. Again, this is not going to send anyone to jail.
All right. Well, then let's get right into it. House of Commons, we're going to smash it out right away. Aaron Kennedy and Looney, smash that like, hit subscribe. We do an amazing show here. I feel that way today. Anyhow, we're right into this.
Thomas More was Lord Chancellor of England and was imprisoned and executed because he refused to violate his conscience. Today, watching the sentencing of Jimmy Lai, it is impossible not to see the parallels between Moore and this modern champion of truth and justice. Jimmy Lai fled mainland China and arrived in Hong Kong as a penniless refugee at the age of 12. He went on to become an incredibly successful entrepreneur and media mogul. After the Tiananmen Square massacre, he fully oriented his resources towards freedom, democracy, and justice. Lai was baptized by another Hong Kong democracy hero, Cardinal Joseph Zen, right after the infamous handover. As a man of faith, Lai fearlessly redoubled his efforts to defend his home from tyranny. For his fight, Jimmy Lai has now been handed a 20-year prison sentence. Christians will see these events through the lens of the cross and redemptive suffering. Lai's fight for Hong Kong does not end today. It only grows through his sacrifice. Mr. Speaker, I call on the Prime Minister to speak out in support of Jimmy Lai's release.
The honourable member for Halifax.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Olympics take off, Canadians from coast to coast to coast are cheering on our Team Canada athletes. I'm especially excited to support our national women's hockey team. This is a strong team made up of talented players from across the PWHL, including Blair Turnbull from Stellarton, Nova Scotia. I want to shout out head coach Troy Ryan, who grew up in Spryfield in my riding of Halifax. As a longtime advocate for women's hockey, Troy has coached teams like the Toronto Scepters and the women's team at the 2022 Olympics. He's a proven leader and a great representative for Halifax and Canada. Congratulations to our Team Canada players and staff, and to all athletes participating in events in Milano Cortina. Canada is proud to have you representing us.
The honourable member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Mr. Speaker, it is a treat to rise today in the House to congratulate Megan Oldham on her incredible bronze medal performance at the Milan Olympics.
Absolutely.
Megan's achievement is the result of years of hard work, discipline, sacrifice, relentless effort. But the quiet determination it takes to compete on the world stage is what we saw. When Canadians watched Megan stand on the podium, they didn't just see a medal. They saw the payoff of commitment, resilience, and belief. She reminded young athletes all across Canada that excellence is built one day at a time, often far from the spotlight. So on behalf of Canadians, I want to thank Megan for representing our country so beautifully and so classfully. Her determination is incredible, and her success is a source of pride for her hometown of Parry Sound and people of Parry Sound, Muskoka, for all Canadians in sport, and for all of us here in this House. And I invite all my colleagues to congratulate Megan on her bronze medal performance.
L'honorable député.
The honourable member for La Salle-et-Marne-Verdun. Mr. Speaker, in my riding, housing affordability is what people care about the most. Rents are too high. Young people can't save up for a down payment. And seniors are worried that they might be kicked out of their own neighborhood.
From day one has been simple and clear. Build more homes.
Last year, I announced 2 new social housing projects in our riding. These projects are happening right now and will be creating real housing for real people in our community. With the new Canada-Quebec housing agreement and our collaboration with Build Canada Homes, there are more and more local projects in the works. And this housing is more than just a roof over people's head. It is stability for a family, dignity for seniors, and resilience for our community.
Building smarter and delivering results where it counts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Bravo. Great job. Bravo.
The honourable member for Peace River, Westlock.
February 22nd is Canada's National Human Trafficking Awareness Day, and this is thanks to the hard work of the all-party parliamentary group to end human trafficking and modern-day slavery. Human trafficking is a crime that turns people into objects to be used and exploited. It's vicious, it's profitable, and it's happening right here in Canada. In the book of Isaiah, God calls each of us to learn to do what is right, to seek justice, and to defend the oppressed. In Canada, the vast majority of human trafficking victims are women and girls, born right here in our nation. However, we know that human trafficking can happen to anyone. And as we approach the National Day of Human Trafficking Awareness, I want to encourage my colleagues and all Canadians to do 3 things. Learn the signs of human trafficking, know the national hotline, 1-833-900-1010, and help raise awareness in their communities. May we be relentless, courageous, and committed as we seek to eliminate all forms of human trafficking and modern-day slavery right here in Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Compton-Stansted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Agriculture in Canada is a highly strategic sector. Agriculture feeds our communities, supports our economy, and enables Canada to feed the world. More than ever, we need to consider that our agriculture and agri-food sector is a pillar of our national security. Our farms are among the most productive in the world despite a difficult climate and a short growing season. On this Canada Agriculture Day, I'd like to thank farmers in the eastern townships and elsewhere in the country. Feeding a nation is nothing trivial. It's absolutely critical.
Agriculture is a strategic sector. It feeds our communities, strengthens our economy, and it allows Canada to help feed the world. Food production and security are also matters of national security. In the eastern townships and across the country, farmers and food producers are a source of strength and pride. On this Canadian Agriculture Day, I want to recognize the essential work of those who feed us.
Bravo.
The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to warmly congratulate Valérie Malte, who's from La Baie. On Saturday, at the Milan-Cortina Olympic Games, she brought home the first Canadian medal when she got a bronze medal at the 3,000-meter long track. This is something that Saguenay, Quebec, and Canada can be proud of. She was named Female Athlete of the Year by the Canada Speed Skating Association, and she has reached a world level and the Olympic level in short track and team pursuit. This shows her exceptional talent and determination. What she's done should inspire our youth and reminds us that our regions can produce incredible talent. We are wishing her all the best for her future events and for her career. Thank you, Valérie. We are proud of you.
L'honorable député de Drummond.
The Honourable Member for Drummond. Mr. Speaker, Franco Nuovo just died. We were not ready. It was almost brazen. We thought he would just be gone for a week, and now we don't know who we'll sip our coffee with on a Sunday morning. As Leonard Cohen said, hey, that's no way to say goodbye. Nuovo was a familiar voice on Quebec radio for decades. He was part of an increasingly sparse group, people who have opinions on everything, perhaps a bit of a know-it-all, tough and tender, for everything he's done, for everything he did to help young artists, for all of the fascinating interviews, the breaks, the laughter. Thank you, Monsieur Nuovo.
The Honourable Member for Sackville, Bedford, Preston.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to recognize Rachel Reid, a Canadian author and a constituent in my riding of Sackville, Bedford, Preston. Yes. As of this week, 3 of Rachel's novels, all from her Game Changers book series, have spent well over a month on the New York Times bestsellers list, reaching the number 4 position for combined print and ebook fiction. Books from her series also occupy the top 5 positions on the Globe and Mail's bestsellers list for Canadian fiction. Rachel's work has found readers around the world and has even made the leap to the small screen, with the TV adaptation of her book, Heated Rivalry, of course, becoming a smash global sensation. Through her writing, she has helped expand the types of stories and perspectives that reach mainstream audiences, breaking down barriers and reminding us that Canadian stories are the best stories. I'd like to congratulate Rachel on her remarkable success. She has made our riding, our province, and our country proud, and we all can't wait to see what she does next. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton South East.
Mr. Speaker, Edmonton residents are paying the price of inaction from the Liberal extortion crisis. Every day I hear about extortionists and gangsters that are threatening families and businesses in Edmonton and across the country. Meanwhile, this government has done nothing but weaken sentencing and push catch and release bail. Liberal Bill C-5 scrapped mandatory jail time, and Liberal Bill C-75 forces judges to release repeat violent offenders back onto our communities. Criminals should fear the law. Law-abiding Canadians should not. Yet, under the Liberal government, extortion is up 330%. In a Conservative government, we will bring back mandatory minimum sentences for extortion. They deserve to be in jail, not on bail. It's time to stop crime, end the chaos, and bring home safe streets to Edmonton. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
L'honorable député de Pontiac.
The Honourable Member for Pontiac-Kittaganzibi. Mr. Speaker, the sudden passing of Franco Nuovo has shaken Quebec. Like many French radio listeners from throughout Canada, I counted on hearing his voice and his thoughts every Sunday morning. He was able to create special moments when the radio became a space for dialogue, culture, and exploration. His passing represents a significant loss for Quebec, which will be losing not only one of its warmest voices, this extraordinary journalist and host, but also Quebec will be losing someone who cared deeply about culture and the francophonie. For more than 5 decades, Franco informed and inspired us and brought us together. To all of his loved ones and to all those who loyally listen to his program, we'd like to offer our most sincere condolences. We are thinking of you in your grief. Thank you.
The honourable member for Richmond Hill South.
3 years ago, the Liberal finance minister promised Canadians he would stabilize food prices. Well, he failed. Since that promise, lettuce is up 40%, beef up 27%, and baby formula up 13%. While Liberals excuse their failure as a global phenomenon, the facts tell a different story. Canada now leads the G7 in food inflation. It's double what it was when the Prime Minister took office and twice the U.S. rate. The result? Canadians are forced to make 2.2 million visits to food banks every month, and food bank use has more than doubled under the Liberals. Now the finance minister offers another temporary rebate that won't lower the price of a single grocery item. That's not a long-term solution. It's an admission of failure with no plan to pay for it. Let's be clear. Food price inflation is a Liberal, homegrown, made-in-Canada crisis. Conservatives have a plan. Axe the industrial carbon tax, scrap the fuel standards adding 17 cents a litre, and increase competition in grocery chains. So will the Liberals drop the excuses, stop obstructing Parliament, and support a real food affordability plan, or will they keep serving up Liberal rhetoric on empty plates? Well said.
L'honorable député d'Argenteuil.
The honourable member for Argenteuil-Lac-Nation. Mr. Speaker, today I rise to speak about an important winter event that happens yearly in my riding. I'm speaking about the Canadian Ski Marathon. This year, the marathon turned 60. It was held on the 6th, 7th, and 8th of February this year, and it brings together thousands of skiers and volunteers from throughout the country. The Canadian Ski Marathon shows off our landscapes and the spirit of solidarity that brings together our communities. The route goes through Argenteuil-Lac-Nation, my riding, and one of the routes ends in the municipality of Montebello, which is a community that is proud of contributing to the success of this iconic event. I'd like to thank all of the organizers, volunteers, and municipalities that participated. Thanks to their hard work, the ski marathon has been an exceptional event for more than 6 decades. It remains a source of pride for our region and for all of Canada. Thank you.
The honourable member for Niagara Falls, Niagara-on-the-Lake.
Speaker, the government's decision to scrap its EV mandate confirms what Conservatives have said all along. A forced 100% EV sales target was unrealistic and only created uncertainty.
That's right.
Bringing back EV rebates now offers little to Canada's auto workers, including those in St. Catharines, when up to $2.3 billion in taxpayer incentives will be subsidizing U.S. auto production when the U.S. is putting U.S. tariffs on Canadian-made vehicles. Canada's auto sector supports hundreds of thousands of good-paying jobs. Decisions affecting it should put Canadian workers and domestic production first.
That's right.
That's what our workers deserve. Yet Canadian auto workers are now left asking what their future will be when over 95% of EVs this Liberal government will promote come from outside of Canada. Sadly, under this Liberal government, no job is safe. They promised the Canada-U.S. trade deal to protect Canadian jobs, but instead are supporting foreign manufacturers. Donald Trump is smiling. Speaker, he's...
L'honorable député de Sherbrooke.
The honourable member for Sherbrooke. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the new industrial defence strategy set to be revealed in a few days, I would like to speak about the remarkable accomplishment of a business in my riding, Dara Technologies. A national competition was organized in Ottawa under the Department of National Defence Ideas Program. Dara Technologies brought home the first prize, worth $1 million, after rigorous testing by defense experts, the armed forces, the RCMP, and others. And thanks to this testing, Darrett's technology for detecting drones in an urban setting won the first prize, using unique acoustic detection technology. Sherbrooke should be proud. This award bears witness not only to Darrett Tech's innovation, but also to the vitality of our research ecosystem. I'd like to warmly congratulate their team. You are making Sherbrooke proud, and you are increasing security and innovation in Canada. Thank you.
Oral questions. Questions orales. The Honourable Member for Thornhill.
Everywhere you look, life is getting harder for young people after a decade of this government. Finding a place to live is harder because home prices, rent, and mortgages have doubled. Getting a job is harder because youth unemployment is still double the national average. And even buying groceries is harder because food inflation is up 100% under this Prime Minister's watch. After paying for the basics, there's barely anything left, and often nothing at all. How can anybody on that side of the House stand behind a record that has completely failed an entire generation of Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Mr. Speaker, every step of the way as this government has supported Canadians in what undeniably is an uncertain time, they have fought against, Mr. Speaker. Conservatives have stood up time and time again against Canadian families, against Canadian workers, against Canadian children, voting down, Mr. Speaker, things like school food programs, enhancements to EI, work and support for families, early learning and childcare. Mr. Speaker, no matter the solution, all they can do is obstruct and get in the way.
That's right. Honourable Member for Thornhill.
The minister can pretend that everything is fine, but she's clearly not listening to anything anybody says in here. So maybe she'll listen to Miriam from Toronto. She's 26. She works 12-hour shifts as a nurse and told CTV News that, quote, saving for a home is completely out of reach right now. She said that she's barely making ends meet, even after going to school, getting a good-paying job, and doing everything that she was told to do. So is this minister really saying to young people who have done everything right that they should just lower their standards and accept a future of just getting by?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what this government is saying to young people is you can help us build big things in this country. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? Canadian young people are stepping up to help. All across the country, Canadian youth have been taking advantage of skills training, Mr. Speaker, in partnership with provinces just like Ontario to make sure that as we build big things, they're on the front line in the skilled trades, building bigger, building better. But you know what, Mr. Speaker? These Conservatives will vote again and again and again against the very people they say they help, including young people. You know, in that own riding of Thornhill.
The Honourable Member for Barrie South Innisfil.
The last 10-plus years have been incredible if you're a well-connected Liberal insider, lobbyist, friend, or have business connections to the Prime Minister. Every leading indicator says the Canadian economy is in free fall, and while they get to gorge on the all-you-can-take taxpayer buffet, auto workers, tradespeople, families, and single moms who are struggling to pay rent and mortgages, young people who have lost hope, and seniors who can't afford groceries are being told they've never had it so good. What happened to all the grand promises of the last election? Wasn't it more about Liberal self-preservation than solutions to fix the self-inflicted wounds they've caused over the last 10 years?
The Honourable Minister of Housing and Infrastructure.
We have a plan to attack affordability across this country that starts with housing, but it certainly extends to tax breaks like we saw in these recent weeks with the groceries. And we had a tax break for 22 million Canadians last year. So, Mr. Speaker, we're delivering on affordability. We're focused on a first-time home buyer's tax break up to $50,000 and building homes, affordable homes for young Canadians at an unprecedented scale. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Barrie South Innisfil.
By every metric, every problem Canadians faced before the last election is getting worse. Food costs have doubled. Food bank use has doubled. Housing starts are almost non-existent. We're seeing mass layoffs and plant closures across all sectors of our economy. The interprovincial trade barrier still exists. Still, no trade deal with the U.S. $500 billion in investment capital have left Canada. Deficits are ballooning, and Canada's debt is at record levels. In the last election, they promised affordability, lower prices, and real relief for Canadians. So after a year of higher costs and broken promises, which part of that do the Liberals actually think that they've delivered on?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
Maybe the member doesn't know, but we're in the middle of a trade war, Mr. Speaker. But despite that, Canada's economy has been resilient. Canadians have created over 160,000 jobs since September. Wages are rising. Inflation is now within the target range, but we're not stopping there, Mr. Speaker. We're building big, building bold, and building now. With Canadian lumber, Canadian steel, and Canadian unionized worker, Mr. Speaker, we're making the largest infrastructure investment in Canadian history to strengthen communities, create more jobs, create long-term careers in the trades. Mr. Speaker, while the Conservatives continue to object, play games in Parliament, Mr. Speaker, we're working for Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent Akiawenrak. Mr. Speaker, what could be more essential than food? We cannot live if we do not eat our fill. And yet, sadly, all Canadian families are facing the worst food inflation of all G7 countries. Food inflation is 6.2%. Our food basket costs twice as much here as it does in the United States. And in Canada, food banks are overwhelmed. When will the government take real, effective action to combat food inflation and to get results? The Minister of Industry. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, grocery prices are rising. We are aware of that, and that's why we are in solution mode. We put forward a clear solution to this Parliament, and our solution is supported by the Conservatives. We will give $1,200 to a family of four. We are here to help Canadians through these tough times of food inflation. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent Akiawenrak. What we need are real results with long-term, tangible impacts. Last weekend in Quebec City, I was doing groceries, and I ran into a grocery store manager. He came up to chat with me, and he told me that he was disheartened. Now, parents are stealing or shoplifting food. That's the state of affairs. And the fact check on this is that the Canadian Council of Retailers estimates that $9 billion worth of food is being stolen from groceries. When will the government take real action to combat food inflation for the long term? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are here. We are here for the long term. Our measure is for a period of 5 years. We will be able to support families through this time of rising grocery costs. But we are here for people through other programs. We have the Canada Child Benefit, for instance. We have the National School Food Program. And good news, the Government of Quebec and the federal government just signed an agreement for that. We're there for families. We're there for children. We're there for Canadians from coast to coast to coast. The Honourable Member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, the minister revealed that 85,000 retirees have been experiencing problems with their old age pensions due to the QRAM software. In some cases, these problems have been going on for up to 9 months. The government was warned by its own public servants as early as this summer. And yet, even today, all the government can come up with to say is, if there are any individual cases, give us those people's names. Mr. Speaker, with 85,000 individuals affected, we are well beyond the point of dealing with isolated cases. We're facing another fiasco like the Phoenix fiasco or the passport crisis. Why did the Liberals wait until 85,000 people were affected before reacting? The Honourable Secretary of State for Seniors. Through the budget, over 7 million seniors are receiving their pensions through a modern system. QRAM software will be used for 4 projects. 6.6 billion is the amount that has been approved for the project. The member across the way is welcome to give me the names of those who are affected. We will help those people. The member for Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, there was once a time when Liberals told Quebecers, you must stay in Canada or else you won't receive your pension anymore. Now the government's telling seniors, stay in Canada even though you won't receive your pension. And to top it off, we're all going to pay a fortune for this fiasco, including seniors they're going to pay because the QRAM software has gone over budget by almost $5 billion. That's a high price to pay for depriving retirees of their old age benefits. Why is it that every time the federal government gets involved, we end up with skyrocketing costs and no services? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, the Secretary of State just gave us the state of affairs. We are modernizing our systems. Now, seniors will be able to sign up for old age security. They will be able to receive their benefits on time, and they will receive the right amounts. If there are any individual cases, if any members in this place have heard of any cases, they are more than welcome to tell us about those cases so that we can follow up. Mr. Speaker, there have been a few isolated cases, a few isolated mistakes, and we are fixing that. The Honourable Member for Shefford. Mr. Speaker, the minister said that 85,000 pensioners are having problems with their old age pensions because of the federal government. Now that 85,000 people are affected, it's time for the Liberals to stop treating this as if it were just isolated cases. Resources must be devoted to resolving these cases. The cases are piling up in Ottawa. The government must fix the problems with the Kuram software. They must help public servants to better serve the public. And at the very least, the federal government must stop treating retirees' problems lightly. When will the government get to action for those affected? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, 7 million Canadians receive old age security benefits. The software that we use to pay out those benefits has been modernized. We are modernizing our way of paying out benefits, and this modernization will help people. Seniors will be able to sign up for their benefits online rather than having to line up at a Service Canada office or having to wait on the phone. 85,000 people, that's 85,000 too many. We can all agree on that. But, Mr. Speaker, we are fixing these cases.
St. Paul. Last week, the Liberal government announced $2.3 billion in subsidies to buy electric vehicles. Electric vehicles manufactured in the United States will be eligible for this subsidy. It is inconceivable that the Liberal government would launch a multi-billion-dollar taxpayer-funded program that will directly benefit the American auto sector at a time that Trump's tariff war has cost Canada 5,000 jobs and counting in our auto sector. Will the Liberal government reverse course and stop American access to this $2.3 billion subsidy, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Indeed, good news. Last week we announced our auto strategy based on two objectives. First, making sure we support auto production here in Canada and supporting those who invest in us, so basically the companies that produce cars in Canada. And second, making sure that we embrace where the industry is, which is electrification, and where it's going. So, Mr. Speaker, apart from the Conservative, everybody has been in favor of it. Premier Ford, the unions, the industry, even environmentalists and consumer groups. Why don't they get?
The Honourable Member for Kildonan St. Paul.
Who's also in favor of this, Mr. Speaker? Donald Trump. Because $2.3 billion is now accessible to his auto market when his tariff war is costing our economy thousands of jobs. It is, again, inconceivable that the Liberals would manufacture a program that gives billions of taxpayer dollars access to the American market. Why would we subsidize the American auto sector at a time like this? Will they reverse course, yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
When auto plants from American car companies were being closed, we embraced the Japanese automakers. We'll do that, and we will endorse those who build EVs.
The Honourable Member for Dufferin-Caledon.
North America when these Liberals announced their EV subsidy plan is Donald J. Trump. Yes. Let me explain. He has explicitly said he wants to take every single Canadian auto job and bring it down to the United States. And under these Liberals, he's succeeding. 5,000 auto workers have lost their job. The plant in Brampton that was supposed to build the Jeep Compass is now in the United States. So they are succeeding under these Liberals. Auto workers do not want their tax dollars going to subsidize American-made vehicles. Will the minister look them in the face today and say, no Canadian tax dollars will go to Trump's America to build vehicles?
The Honourable Minister.
You know what
what we do on this side of the aisle? We look at people in the eyes and we say, we'll defend your jobs. And that's exactly what this auto strategy is about. This auto strategy is about supporting auto production in Canada. And we are making sure that we're talking to Koreans, to Germans, to Chinese to create good jobs in this country. And while we will just not let our industry just go bit by bit to the south, we will fight for these jobs. We have an auto strategy and they should get with the program.
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
I almost feel badly for this minister, pathetically trying to justify sending money to Donald Trump's America to subsidize the production of American EVs. This is the president who has declared economic war on Canada. He has said he wants every single Canadian auto job in the United States. And under these Liberals, he's succeeding. The Canadian auto economy is being decimated. Their plan, allow the American auto manufacturers access to Canadian dollars for EV subsidies. It's disgraceful. It's unconscionable. Will she apologize to Canadian auto workers for this terrible policy?
The Honourable Minister.
Not because my colleague is just increasing his rhetoric that actually he's right. What is right is that we have met the tariffs by the U.S. administration against our auto workers with counter tariffs. And every time the production has reduced in Canada, what did we do? We made sure that we limit the market access to Stellantis by 50%, to also GM by 24.2%. We will invest in those who invest in us, and we will make sure to create good jobs in this country.
The honourable member for Oxford.
Mr. Speaker, Carney workers were devastated last year when they lost their jobs, but it got worse. Last week, they received their layoff payouts, only to see that more than half of it was clawed back in taxes. That's thousands of dollars, and many of them can't afford to wait for the next year's tax return. They need the money now to pay for their bills, their mortgages, their rents, and to put food on the table. So will the Liberals work with us, stand with Carney auto workers, and provide immediate tax relief so they can afford to live?
The Honourable Minister of Jobs and Families.
Mr. Speaker, the only party fighting against workers is the party opposite, who voted against the budget, wherein we outline the work that we've been doing to protect workers for exactly this situation, Mr. Speaker. And thanks to the proactive vision of the government to protect workers in these situations, workers who are separated from their employment now can keep their last pay. They don't have to wait for EI. And indeed, long-tenured workers, like many of these, will receive an additional 20 weeks on top of supports for readjustment, Mr. Speaker. We've been there for workers, we will be, and we certainly won't vote against them.
The honourable member for Oxford.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't get an answer to my question, but it's sadly ironic that while Canadian workers are losing their jobs, while they're seeing more than half of their payouts taken to taxes, the Liberals are out handing $2.3 billion for subsidies for American-made electrical vehicles. All this is happening while the U.S. is slapping tariffs on Canadian-made autos. Wow. Canadian tax dollars should not be funding American-made EVs. So my question is very simple. Why is money being taken out of the pockets of auto workers to fund American jobs?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I know the member and I know he cares about those workers, as do we, Mr. Speaker. The Carney plant in Ingersoll is a half hour from my house. I regularly speak to Mayor Brian Petrie, who's doing an excellent job in very trying circumstances. Business owners who rely on the presence of the plant, I know them. The social agencies who are responding to the crisis on the ground, I know their leaders, I know their staff. We should work together on their behalf. He also knows, Mr. Speaker, that for the severance pay that he's referring to, the CRA is treating it as it always is, as a matter of Canadian law. The time is to put away politics. Let's work together on behalf of the people of Ingersoll and the auto sector.
The honourable member for Windsor West.
The Prime Minister has committed $2.3 billion to subsidizing EVs, yet most EVs sold in Canada are made outside our country. The Industry Minister herself admitted only one EV is made in Canada. Canadians are being forced to subsidize rebates for American-made cars, while over 5,000 Canadian workers have lost their jobs to U.S. tariffs. Why is the Prime Minister forcing Canadians to subsidize American-made EVs instead of putting Canadian workers first and adopting the Conservative plan to cut GST on all Canadian-made vehicles? Would not that make more sense?
The Honourable Minister of Industry.
Speaker, I would like to correct my colleague. There's not only one EV made in Canada, it's a Dodge Charger, of course, but also there's the Pacifica, and more to come. We have 2 battery plants. One also in Windsor, they're against, still don't understand why, which is an LG battery plant, and there's one that is being built as we speak by Volkswagen. Good news, 3,000 jobs coming to St. Thomas. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to our auto workers, we'll continue to fight for them. We won't sit idle while basically a lot of the industry is going through its most difficult period in decades. We'll fight for them.
The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes, Verchères. Mr. Speaker, we criticize the federal government for doing nothing to address the issue of low-cost drivers. But it gets worse. Not only is Ottawa doing nothing to address the issue, they are giving those drivers contracts. Canada Post has done business with at least 25 companies that hire low-cost drivers, including one that was involved in a fatal accident. And the worst part is that the federal government was warned about this 2 years ago by the Trucking Alliance. When will the Liberals set up a registry of sketchy companies instead of hiring sketchy companies? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, Post Canada is, of course, working with many trucking companies throughout the country. The CEO of Canada Post has assured us that the business in question uses the Driver Inc. model. There is a clear code of conduct for these companies to follow, and there are consequences if they do not follow the code of conduct. And we, as the federal government, are ensuring that Canada Post follows the rules. The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes, Verchères. Mr. Speaker, Canada Post has hired 25 companies that do business with low-cost drivers. The Liberals have been aware of the problem for at least 2 years. We offer the Liberals 10 solutions. Not only do the Liberals refuse to implement our solutions, but they're continuing to feed the beast. At this point, the Liberals have gone beyond just turning a blind eye. They are now complicit. The Liberals just gave Canada Post $1 billion. Can they at least make sure that that money doesn't end up in the pockets of problem companies?
Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canada Post is proud to work with many trucking companies across the country. In doing so, the CEO of Canada Post has assured us they have no engagement with Drivers Inc. model. All contracted suppliers are provided with clear expectations, a code of conduct to abide by, and consequences for non-compliance. We, as a government, expect Canada Post to abide by these standards. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, last week, the member for Beauport-Limoilou told us in this place that the cost of the tramway in Quebec City was now up to, get this, $13 billion. Yes, Mr. Speaker, $13 billion. That's $5 billion more than what's outlined in the agreement between Quebec City and the Caisse de dépôt. Can the Minister of Finance confirm whether the cost of the Quebec City tramway is $7 or $7 billion or $13 billion, as the member for Beauport-Limoilou said?
Monsieur le Président, merci pour la question.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for the question.
Investment of $1.44 billion from the federal government, and we continue to invest significantly in public transit across the country. The Canada Public Transit Fund, as well as the Building Community Strong Fund, where there is tens of billions of dollars available if this House supports the budget to allocate towards transit. So Quebec, other provinces, cities will have access to the Build Community Strong Fund with the support of this House to fund major transit projects. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, $1.4 billion, that's an amount from 9 years ago. We are way further than that now, and the member for Beauport-Limoilou said it will cost $13 billion. Will the Liberals follow their promise? Because in the budget, there's not a cent for public transit in Quebec for this project. So will Quebec City get $0, or can the Liberals commit to a certain amount today? The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, the member for Beauport-Limoilou has been here for 9 months and has done more for the tramway than that member has done for the tramway in 10 years. We've been supporting the tramway project since 2018, and unlike the member across the way, says it will be $1.4 billion. That's what we are committing to this public transit project for the Quebec City region. Now, of course, we are still in talks for funding for Quebec through the Public Transit Fund, and there will, of course, be funding through the Building Community Strong Fund.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Basque. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The same Liberal mismanagement is repeating itself like a bad movie. Do you remember ArriveCan in 2022? The budget, $86,000. The actual cost, $60 million. 5 years later, same Liberal team, IT scandals are repeating themselves with Curam. Budget, $1.6 billion. Actual cost, $6.6 billion. And what's more, it's a failure. 86,000 seniors are waiting for their money. 86,000 seniors. What do you tell these seniors who are listening to you? Am I writing? Well, your answer is live right now. I don't have an answer to give you. I confirm to the Honourable Member, I don't have a reply. The Honourable Secretary of State for Seniors. More than 7 million seniors are receiving their benefits on time, and these are 4 distinct projects. $6.6 billion have been set out and approved for the life of the project. I would ask the member across the way to give the names of these seniors, and we will help them. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Côte-du-Sud, Rivière-du-Loup. Mr. Speaker, in Quebec, we've all seen cost overruns with Sac Leak site. Hundreds of millions of dollars gone up in smoke. But this is peanuts compared to the federal Curam fiasco. $6.6 billion instead of $1.75 billion for a failed software program that was supposed to manage old age pensions and doesn't even work properly. Currently, there's 86,000 seniors who aren't receiving their money because of this Liberal incompetence. The Liberals are still wasting billions, and Canadians are always paying the price. When will this government finally, what will they do with this federal fiasco? Thank you. The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to tell Ms. Bolduc, who's listening to us, or the constituents of all these ridings, one case too many. We're going to solve all these issues for Madame Bolduc and everyone. We will give them the benefits they have the right to receive, and we are modernizing our IT infrastructure, and it will serve Canadians well. It will allow for better service going forward and quicker access to old age security. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, the new Curam software for managing old age security benefits is a real disaster. Not only does it exceed the projected costs, but it works so poorly that employees give it a rating of 5 out of 10 or less. In fact, according to one employee, if the department had listened to its agents, it could have developed a system that was 1,000 times easier to use. Why should seniors suffer the consequences of this mismanagement by the Liberals? The Honourable Minister.
Correct. There aren't cost overruns. In fact, the project is on budget, Mr. Speaker. And in fact, 7.4 million OAS clients were migrated in March of 2025. Seniors can apply directly online. This is a 60-year-old system, Mr. Speaker. Indeed, Canadians expect us to keep our IT systems modernized, and that's exactly what we're doing. If the member opposite has a constituent that needs help, please give them our name. We can certainly accelerate their case.
The Honourable Member for Hamilton West, Ancaster Dundas.
The United States government has unilaterally started a trade war against Canada.
I really couldn't hear a word of that, so we'll have the Honourable Member. We'll have the Honourable Member start from the top. We'll start from the top.
Every time.
And yes, he can start from the top. Thanks.
Every time. The United States government has unilaterally started a trade war against Canada. In response,
there's obviously a subtext here somewhere.
Yeah, he's always yelling at Pierre.
But let's put that aside. Let's put that aside. In good faith. I don't want to call anyone out on this side either. So the honourable member from Hamilton West, Ancaster, Dundas.
Unilaterally started a trade war against Canada. In response, the Prime Minister is committed to doubling non-U.S. trade with direct measures to help Canadian businesses adapt and grow. Can the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources tell this?
Yeah. This is going to make the question period a little lengthier than I had anticipated. I was going for a new record today, 303 or 304, but I don't think that's going to happen. But I guess anyway, we're going to give it another shot, and yeah, we have to, or else this is going to go on for a long time. We'll cut into committee time and everything. So the honourable member for Hamilton West, Ancaster, Dundas has the floor.
As I was saying.
And let's see if we can get through it. And of course, that doesn't help either. So we'll try from the top.
From the top. The United States government has started a trade war against Canada. In response, the Prime Minister is committed to doubling non-U.S. trade with direct measures to help Canadian businesses adapt and grow. Can the Minister of Energy and Natural Resources tell this House what our government is doing to support Canadian businesses impacted by unjustified American tariffs?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for that excellent question. We are standing shoulder to shoulder with workers and businesses facing the impacts of unfair and unjustified U.S. tariffs, with targeted support to help businesses adapt, retool, and stay competitive. That includes $1 billion through the Regional Tariff Relief Initiative, which is helping businesses protect jobs and diversify to new markets. Mr. Speaker, we're not just helping businesses weather this moment, we're building Canada strong.
Yeah. The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians have been disappointed to see that this Prime Minister is not delivering on his promises. Now, he promised the strongest economy in the G7, but we lost 52,000 private sector jobs last month. He promised to build at speeds unseen in generations. We're actually losing jobs at speeds unseen in generations. Now, Conservatives have offered solutions like the Canadian Sovereignty Act and the Conservative Youth Jobs Plan, which Liberals continue to oppose. Mr. Speaker, when will they reverse course and start creating jobs instead of more job losses?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Financial Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, Conservative slogans, rhetoric and obstruction don't feed Canadian families. We've cut taxes for 22 million Canadian families. We cut the GST for first-time homebuyers. We cut the consumer carbon tax. And just a couple of weeks ago, we announced the Canadians Groceries and Essentials benefit that will put up to $1,900 in the pockets of working families. On this side of the House, we're going to continue to be laser-focused on affordability for families. That side, stop the obstruction.
The honourable member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, I truly have no idea what that member is focused on, but my question was about the results of their policies. Now let's talk about the results. 52,000 private sector job losses, 28,000 in manufacturing alone. That's just in the last month. He talked about the price of food. We have food inflation in this country that's more than double food inflation in the United States. Mr. Speaker, if this member can't answer a question about the results, when will he look at those Statistics Canada reports? And if he sees the problems that every other Canadian can see, when will they reverse course?
Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, that Conservative leader and that member, think about this. They actually supported giving millionaires child benefit checks.
That's right.
They supported giving millionaires child benefit checks. Let me say that again. They voted against the school food program. Every other affordability program we have put forth, they have voted against. against. That party is focused on obstruction. We're focused on delivering for Canadian families. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Haldimand Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are losing jobs, plants are shutting down, and investments are fleeing. Canada lost 52,000 private sector jobs last month alone. Workers and families are paying the price, from GM employees in Oshawa to forestry families in Quebec who are struggling to put food on the table. This is the opposite of what the Prime Minister promised. When will the Liberals admit that their rhetoric is far from their reality of Canadians face, and finally listen to common sense Conservative solutions?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
134,000 jobs created in the past year. Wages outpacing inflation for almost 3 years. A rate of inflation that is well within the Bank of Canada's guidelines at 2.4%. But we will not rest on that, Mr. Speaker. We cannot, because the aim now must always be to secure Canada's future. Budget 2025 puts a foundation for that in place. Will the Conservatives join us? Put the politics aside. Let's work on behalf of our constituents. Let's work on behalf of Canada right now.
The honourable member for Haldimand Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister promised the fastest growing economy in the G7, and yet GDP growth is currently zero. Manufacturing, auto, and forestry sectors are all declining, and families in Haldimand, Norfolk fear for their livelihoods as the economy weakens. Despite this economic decline, the government has not repealed a single anti-development law. When will the Liberals finally admit that their economic plans is failing and remove the barriers and tax burdens holding back Canadian workers and the economy?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Almost 240 agreements signed between the federal government and various municipalities, large and small, for the Housing Accelerator Fund, Madam Speaker. They want to talk about getting things done and anti-development. The facts don't line up with that narrative. The reality is we need to build more. Duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, that kind of vision put in place through that agreement. But if they don't want to listen to Liberals, that's fine. They can listen to former Prime Minister Harper, who just the other day advised all members of Parliament to work together on behalf of this country. The time is now. Let's rise to the occasion. It's a moment of crisis, a moment of rupture. We can respond right now.
The honourable member for Long Range Mountains.
Mr. Speaker, Newfoundland and Labrador continues to face one of the highest unemployment rates in Canada at 10.7%, well above the national average. Statistics Canada reports that 52,000 private sector jobs were lost since last year, and the Bank of Canada says economic growth next year is expected to be just 1.1%. Businesses are delaying expansion and investment. At home, that means fewer projects, fewer jobs, and more people leaving to find work. When will this Prime Minister admit his economic plan is failing, listen to our solutions, and remove the barriers that are preventing job creation for Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans.
Mr. Speaker, I have good news for this member. In Budget 2025, we are growing this country. We are growing rural Newfoundland and Labrador and the rest of Canada. We are working to invest in our apprenticeship programs. We are building roads, schools. The challenge, Mr. Speaker, is this member, as part of the opposition, is obstructing at every step.
Right.
Let's grow Canada. We need to work together.
Honourable member for Long Range Mountains.
Mr. Speaker, the fact remains that the Prime Minister promised the fastest growing economy in the G7, yet GDP growth stalled at zero and GDP per capita was flat. Young people are leaving home because they can't find steady work. We have proposed a Canadian Sovereignty Act that would rapidly advance resource development by repealing job-killing laws like the oil and gas emissions cap, reward those who build, and protect Canadian innovation. So when will they listen to our ideas so people can stay, live, and work in the place that they love?
The Honourable Minister.
From Newfoundland and Labrador, that voting against the bills that support Canadian workers, Canadian communities, the building of our country and our province of Newfoundland and Labrador is obstruction. If this member wants wants to see our province of Newfoundland and Labrador grow. I can tell her that we are ready, but this side of the House needs to work with us.
The honourable member for Mission Matsqui, Abbotsford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Small businesses are paying the price for the Prime Minister's economic inaction. In January, 52,000 private sector jobs were lost, and $39 billion in investment has fled to the United States. Wow. Canadian businesses are delaying expansion, and workers are losing their livelihoods. The Prime Minister promised the fastest growing economy in the G7, but growth is flat, and not a single anti-development or major regulation has been removed by this government. So when will the Prime Minister empower the private sector to build at a scale necessary to protect Canada's economy in the face of American threats?
The Honourable Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Speaker, the Prime Minister has a plan to build Canada. He's laid it out, and we're taking action to advance that. Because individuals in British Columbia, they want to see the investments that we're making. They want to see the major projects move forward. They want to see the new housing, and they want to see us grow this economy to the strongest economy in the G7. Mr. Speaker, we're moving forward with this plan. Can we count on the Conservatives to join us?
Honourable member for Northumberland, Clark.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister promised the fastest growing economy in the G7, yet under his watch, $58 billion of net investments have fled to the United States, and we've lost 28,000 manufacturing jobs. Promising to build a pipeline is not enough. Creating a new bureaucracy, not enough. Reapproving projects over and over again, not enough. We need shovels in the ground. We need them in the ground now. When will the Prime Minister do what he promised and build at a scale we haven't seen in generations and work with Conservatives to stand up for our sovereignty against the American threat?
Honourable Secretary of State for Labour.
Mr. Speaker, 160,000 new jobs created since September. Wages are up. Inflation is within the standard rate. Mr. Speaker, we know that certain sectors like auto are feeling the pain from the tariff war, but we have a plan, Mr. Speaker, a plan that was laid out in our budget that was introduced in the fall, Mr. Speaker. Unfortunately, the Conservatives are blocking the budget at committee. If that member wants to make a difference for workers in his community, pass the budget, Mr. Speaker, so we can unleash the power, build in this country, protect jobs, support communities, build our country, Mr. Speaker. Will the member do it? Will the Conservatives do it?
The honourable member for Cloverdale, Langley City.
I just attended an event hosted by Speak BC with a room full of highly trained engineers and technologists. They were asking whether the next round of manufacturing investment will stay here in Canada or go to the U.S. They want solutions so that their jobs are secure. StatsCan says we lost 28,000 jobs last month in manufacturing alone. That's fewer shifts, tighter budgets, and more families struggling to get by. The government has to recognize that what it's doing isn't working. When will the Liberals listen to our constructive solution to this urgent problem?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, building a strong economy is not just about looking at any single sector. It's about looking at all sectors. So making sure we're investing in the economy of the future today, but make sure we're investing in technology, making sure that we are investing in artificial intelligence, make sure we're creating the jobs of the future in industries where Canadians can lead. So as we work to support our manufacturing sector, Mr. Speaker, we're also making sure that in health sciences, in life sciences, in biotech, in technology, in e-commerce, in digital, in AI, in quantum, Canada is going to continue to lead and create the jobs of the future today.
The honourable member for Madawaska-Restigouche. Mr. Speaker, a functional healthcare system relies on modern data infrastructure. However, at a time when data is circulating at lightning speed, too many doctors and nurses are still forced to use outdated technologies such as fax machines to share information about their patients. Can the Minister of Health inform the House of the steps the government is taking to remove these barriers and thus save lives? Thank you. The Honourable Minister of Health. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for his question. The time that patients wait for their files to be transferred means that lives could be saved faster, and their doctors are still spending too much time printing documents and not enough time helping people. The Connected Healthcare System Act that we tabled last week will break down silos and build a data infrastructure for health for all Canadians. So I am delighted to be working with members of Parliament and senators to get this legislation adopted. Thank you.
Branch South, Six Nations.
Mr. Speaker, extortion is a national crisis, exploding 330% since these Liberals took office. In Surrey, Calgary, Brampton, and across Canada, Canadians are being threatened, shot at, firebombed while criminal gangs and violent non-citizens extort families, all thanks to Liberal inaction. Will the Prime Minister support our plan, even supported by the NDP Premier of BC, to bar extortionists and serious criminals from exploiting refugee claims, or will he continue shielding criminals while Canadians pay the price, often with their lives?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, we've been meeting those who have been impacted by extortion, and I want to extend my condolences to those who have been impacted. Let me just say, Mr. Speaker, we need to work in collaboration in order to ensure that extortion is addressed. We need the party opposite to pass critical pieces of legislation, including C2. Virtually every law enforcement agency, every heads I've spoken to have asked for lawful access to become law in Canada, Mr. Speaker. It's one of the most important tools to ensure that extortion is addressed. We need to stop the obstructionism and make sure that we have critical tools that are important for law enforcement.
The Honourable Member for Abbotsford South Langley.
Mr. Speaker, extortion has surged by 330% since the Liberals took office. Across our country, Canadians are under attack, and the Liberals are rejecting Conservative plans to stop this violence. Now, convicted extortionists are exploiting loopholes in our justice and immigration system by filing refugee claims to stay in Canada. Will the Liberals back our Conservative plan, also supported by the BC NDP Premier, to bar non-citizens convicted of serious crimes from making refugee claims, or will they continue to side with the criminals?
The Honourable Secretary of State for Combating Crime.
Mr. Speaker, the second bill that we brought in this Parliament was C2. C2 addressed this very issue and also provided other measures like lawful access. I'm glad to see that the Conservatives have somewhat cooperated and split that bill into C12, which is now in the Senate, which will create an ineligibility for precisely these types of people who try to exploit our system. Mr. Speaker, they will no longer be able to apply for asylum, but I'd like the members opposite to also cooperate on lawful access, because we need to catch these criminals.
Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Actually, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals voted against a Conservative amendment to Bill C-12, which would have barred non-citizens who are convicted of serious crimes from abusing our asylum system and making refugee claims. They voted against that. That's crazy. Will the Liberals agree with Premier David Eby that that is an amendment, that is a proposal that should be accepted, as well as non-citizens who are accused of serious crimes should not be able to make refugee claims, because that's kind of bananas?
The Honourable Secretary of State.
Mr. Speaker, I've been following these cases very closely, and the case in BC where some people have filed for asylum, C-12, which is in the Senate right now, progressing nicely, will make it an ineligibility for those particular claimants to be able to file for asylum. So we are closing those loopholes, Mr. Speaker. We're working tirelessly to make sure that extortionists get caught, but will the Conservatives help us to give law enforcement the tools that are needed? Please, I'm asking, C2, lawful access measures are needed in order to catch child pedophiles and extortionists, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for South Shore St. Margaret's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Advancing gender equality is key to building a strong and prosperous Canada where everyone can succeed, while the Conservatives minimize coercive control as normal family behaviour and debate 2S LGBTQI rights at their convention. Our government is making sure our organizations across the country have the supports that they need. Can the Minister of Health share how we are empowering, strengthening national women's organizations across Canada? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Today, the Minister for Women and Gender Equality announced over $15 million in funding to support national women's organizations across the country and strengthen capacity building. This means a stronger and more sustainable national women's sector. It means greater capacity to support the organization driving progress on gender equality. It means stronger collaboration to advance opportunity, safety, and rights for women and girls everywhere. This is how we build a Canada strong, where we...
The honourable member for Wellington, Halton Hills North.
Mr. Speaker, Hong Kong has sentenced newspaper publisher Jimmy Lai to 20 years in prison simply for exercising his rights and freedoms of the press, of speech, of assembly, of association guaranteed in an international treaty, the Sino-British Joint Declaration. Will the government reiterate its call for Jimmy Lai to be immediately released? And secondly, will the government acknowledge that his imprisonment is a violation of an international treaty and international law?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question. Canada is deeply disappointed with the tragic sentencing of Jimmy Lai in Hong Kong. We call for the immediate release of Jimmy Lai. In fact, we have consistently spoken out against the national security law since its imposition in 2020. While in Beijing, I reiterated Canada's long-standing position to my counterpart that the persecution of journalists, of media workers, of activists is unacceptable. Mr. Speaker, Canada will always support a free...
The honourable member for Nunavut.
The year before the election, Liberals planned to cut the Inuit Child First initiative. When Inuit heard this, they spoke up by the thousands. Under Nunavut's pressure, Liberals promised to extend the program. Since being elected, the Minister for Indigenous Services promised an announcement on ICFI. 9 months later, far too many Inuit children are still being kept below poverty level. Still no announcement. Will the minister finally act to help Inuit children, or should they feed themselves on her promises?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague for, being really consistent with representing her members. The message has really been clear for me that we need to respond. That's why we've been working with our partners to look forward to see what the next step is going to be. I'm sure that you will be pleased to see what that is going to be. I am going to look forward to what the message is going to be when it comes out very briefly. Thank you.
And that concludes the question period. The honourable member for...
Good morning, everyone. I'm sure everyone's seen the letter that our leader, Pierre Poilievre, sent to the Finance Minister with respect to the state of the auto industry in Canada on February the 9th. We've seen historic declines in auto manufacturing in Canada from somewhere near 2 million vehicles a year to 1.3 million vehicles a year. We've now seen the closure of facilities and thousands of jobs lost. So we want to talk about some solutions today that Conservatives have for the government with respect to the state of the auto industry in Canada. Number one, we've been consistent in this. They need to take the industrial carbon tax off in Canada. It costs the Canadian steel industry about $500 million a year, and we must be looking at similar numbers for Canadian auto manufacturing, which makes our cars more expensive and more difficult to export around the world. Number two, we have talked about taking the HST off of all Canadian-made vehicles. This in of itself would encourage Canadians to buy those vehicles. It would spur local production and have a great chance of bringing back some of the jobs that we've lost in Canada as a result of the tariffs that Donald Trump has put on our automobiles here in Canada. And talking about the tariffs that Donald Trump has put on our automotive manufacturing here in Canada, can someone please explain to me why, in the face of this trade war, this unjustified trade war that the Americans have put on our auto industry, that we would be giving Canadian tax dollars to subsidize electric vehicles made in the United States? This makes absolutely no sense. So we are calling on the government to not allow a single Canadian taxpayer dollar to subsidize or give a rebate for an electric vehicle that is manufactured in the United States. These are clear, sensible positions that will benefit Canadians and Canadian auto workers. I now want to turn it over to my colleague and friend Arpan Khanna from Oxford, where the Bright Drop factory closed.
Well, thank you, Kyle. Good morning, everyone. And we're joined by our great colleagues who also represent some strong areas for the auto sector. Ontario is home to one of the best auto workers in the world. You know, in Oxford County, we have the Toyota plant. And up until recently, we had our Cami GM plant. These are hardworking, tough, highly skilled workers who were the backbone of our community. And the sad news we heard last year with the plant closing has had a devastating effect in our communities. 1,200 workers were laid off. That's 1,200 families being affected. I often hear stories at the Cami plant of couples working together, multi-generations, working side by side on the assembly line. And there's the ripple effect of tens of thousands of spin-off jobs that are being impacted. So these jobs have...
Oh, yeah.
You should do exercises. That's important to our good health. And friends, tomorrow we are going to be visiting with a fisherman who will tell us about his very enjoyable hobby. Now, I would like to see you all through our magic mirror. Romper bumper, stomper boo, tell me, do. Magic mirror, please tell me today, did all of my friends have fun at play? I see all of my friends in Alberta. It's nice to see you. And I see Dan and Vivian. I see Marlon and Mona. I see Catherine and Harley. I see Anne and Elizabeth and Jane. I see Bert and Nicole, and I see you too. I hope to see you tomorrow, right here in Romper Room.
Ding dong, knock knock, hey daddy do. Bing bong, tick tock, bebop boom.
Kick off your weekend with exciting CFL action when the Edmonton Eskimos tackle the BC Lions in Vancouver. Tomorrow night at 10:30 on CFTO TV.